Okay, go.
No way!
Congratulations! Really? Okay, turn around. Turn around. Just turn around, look! Read it, just read it.
What is it? Oh shit!
What?
Wait, really?
Wow!
Oh!
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Katarina and I got accepted into PA school, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to make a sit-down video and talk about my journey and what my stats are and do like a little Q&A. So I did reach out to UTD pre-PA and I asked a few of you guys to give me some questions and I'm gonna answer them. Alright, so question 1. What are my stats? So my overall GPA was a 3.7, my science GPA was a 3.6, my patient care hours, I had about 1,600, my healthcare experience, I had about 200, 90 research hours, 200 hours of volunteering, 110 hours of shadowing, 1,200 hours of leadership, and as for my testing scores, my GRE, I got a 295, and CASPA, I placed in the 3rd quartile. So I just want to talk a little bit about the GPA. So your overall GPA includes everything that you've taken like throughout undergrad, and that includes like dual credit courses that you've taken in high school as well. So any colleges that you've taken from, that is your overall GPA. So I took classes from Dallas College, also from UTD. So that GPA, my 3.7, is a combined total of everything that I've taken from Dallas College and UTD. For example, like my UTD GPA was a 3.8, but my overall GPA, because of the other classes I've taken from Dallas College, it turned into a 3.7 just because in high school I took dual credit and I took physics and I did really bad. I got a B, so that kind of drew it down. But just so you know, like overall GPA includes everything that you've taken like throughout like all the colleges. And then science GPA is just all your science courses. That's your biologies, your chemistries, not your psychologies, but there is a list that CASPA has provided, and I'll leave a link to that like down below, and you can see like what classes count as a science course, and you do want your science GPA to be higher, but generally that is a little bit lower than your overall GPA, which is okay. But as long as you just keep your science GPA, like that's pretty good. But most PA schools have a minimum requirement of 3.0 to apply. So as long as you're above the 3.0, like you should be fine. But again, like you want to be as competitive as possible. Also for me, I know I'm not the best test taker, so I knew like for the GRE I wasn't going to do as well. But I tried to make the other aspects of my application more well-rounded. So I had a lot of extracurricular activities. I think my GPA was decent. I had a lot of patient care experience, healthcare experience, and I think my personal statement was pretty good. So I think that helped balance it out, but I wouldn't say that the GRE is the most important part of your application unless the school specifically says so, that you need to have like a certain score. But most schools in Texas just require you to just take the GRE just to have it like checked off. So question 2, what did I do for PCE? So real quick, patient care experience is just experience where you're responsible for the patient's care. You're kind of touching the patient, you're responsible for their care. Things such as being like a medical assistant like I was, or being an EMT or a phlebotomist. Some people are also a CNA, certified nursing assistant as well. The difference between patient care experience and healthcare experience is that healthcare experience is more like administrative duties, so like faxing medical records, you know, being the receptionist, answering phone calls that day, scheduling patients, things where you're not really responsible for the patient as much, but you're still dealing with patients. But for patient care experience, so my first patient care experience, I was a medical assistant in neurology, and I did that for almost a year. And then I became a medical assistant at a pediatric clinic. So those are my 2 like patient care experiences. So question 3, what were your extracurriculars? So I've always been pretty involved in high school and even in undergrad, but because I applied during like COVID, it was kind of hard to have like a lot of extracurriculars. but I was still involved in things such as FSA and VSA, which are cultural organizations. I was also a part of the UTD powerlifting club, and I think that's what made me stand out as well, just because not a lot of people are in powerlifting. I also still mentioned that I have like a YouTube channel, like I'm a small little content creator, just because again, not a lot of people say they have a YouTube channel, and I just think it makes me like a little bit like
quirky and like different and helps
me like stand out from the other applicants. All right, question 4, what was your major? When did you apply? Can you please talk about your timeline? So I majored in healthcare studies at UTD, and I applied during my junior year. So when you apply, the application opens like the end of April, so let's just say the beginning of May, okay? So you apply during May, June, July, August, and August, September, October area is when applications are usually due, and then you have to have your application submitted by then. But most schools are rolling admission, so you want to get them in as soon as possible. That means as soon as they get applications that they like, they're going to start sending out interviews. So you want to be the first one to get those interviews and be like the early on interviews, if that makes sense. So from May to August, that's about like more applying. August to like winter area is when applications are due, and then winter, October, November, December, January, February, March, that's more like interview season. And then after you interview, then you're basically done. You would have orientation in like April, May, June, or July, and then you'd start school. So for me, like my school starts in July, so I'd have orientation like a week before that. But some schools in Texas also start in May. But yeah, so there you go. And I'll try to put like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'll try to put like a timeline here. But I don't know if I can. But if it's here, then you know I did it. But question 5. How do you get started in the medical field? So I'd say starting off would be the most difficult part, but I'd recommend those of you who are in your freshman or sophomore years to find a job as a medical scribe. Usually as a medical scribe, you don't really need that background or experience to get hired. Basically, you're just following a provider and you would just be typing their notes out for them. You could also become a medical assistant, which I feel like is a little bit more difficult to get. It took me quite a while to find like my first medical assistant job, but I knew I didn't want to be like a scribe because like it is a little bit of a lower pay. So I definitely wanted to be a medical assistant. So if you're able to try to do that. But being a medical assistant, sometimes you do have to have experience, which made it hard, but a lot of the times you don't need a certification, and you also get trained on the job. So for me, again, I worked in neurology and I also worked in pediatrics. Question number 6, any tips for writing a personal statement? So for a personal statement, that's one of the most important parts of your application. So yes, there are a lot of things that you need to do. So make sure you show, not tell. A lot of times people just say, you know, I worked in pediatrics. Well, yeah, that's nice that you worked in pediatrics, but you need to talk about, you know, what you learned, what you saw, how that'll better you in the future, how you can use those experiences to help you become like a better provider in the future. So show, not tell. Another tip I would give would be to not focus your personal statement just solely on clinical experiences. A lot of people told me, Okay, so again, some people told me to focus my personal statement more about my clinical experiences, but I felt like I didn't want to do that. I wanted to mention that, you know, I loved music, I loved art, I loved fitness. I wanted to mention all those things, and I did. And I think that's what made me stand out in my personal statement, because everyone has experience, but your own personal experiences is what makes you different. So I would recommend you incorporate things that make you different aside from your clinical experiences. So if you're involved in football, you're involved in art, you're involved in dance, you're involved in fitness, you're involved in soccer, whatever it is, like I would still mention that in your personal statement and just talk about how it shaped you into the person you are today, because I think that's really important to give the reader something to make you stand out, or something to remember you by, sorry. And another thing, make sure your personal statement is original and it just really showcases who you are. Make sure you use those parentheses when you are introducing a physician assistant, and then after that you can put PA afterwards. Question 7, how did you balance school, work, gym, etc.? So honestly, it's all about like time management and discipline. I grew up in a pretty disciplined household, if you do know me. Yeah, I think being really disciplined and just setting your priorities. Like, I knew my goal was to apply my junior year, and I knew in order to apply my junior year, you just couldn't slack off. Like, you had to put in that time, and it was only on weekends when I would kind of have like fun, I guess. Like, I would go party or whatever, but still, even like after like I partied, I'd wake up like early the next morning and I'd still study. So I think it's really about discipline and just setting your priorities straight and just having like a calendar. I do have like a little electronic calendar where I have like things I need to do that day. And I think just building like a good like routine. So I would do the same thing every single day. Basically, if I wasn't working, I would wake up, go to school. After all my classes, I would study. After that, I would go to the gym. After the gym, I'd go eat out with my friends or something. And then after that, I'd go back to school or go back home, and I would keep studying for the rest of the night. So I think building a good routine, being disciplined, and just setting your priorities straight. That's how you would balance schoolwork and doing all that stuff. Question 8, should you take a gap year or not? So that's really like a personal preference. Usually people who take gap years are people who just like switch like career paths, or they're just now deciding they want to be a PA, or people who don't really have like enough hours to become like competitive. That's when you would take a gap year. That's really up to you. If you want to get more hours, you want to be a more competitive applicant and take more classes, then I would recommend taking a gap year. But if you don't want to take a gap year, then just know that you are going to have to put a lot more work in during your undergrad years in order to not take a gap year. Like for me, I knew I didn't want to take a gap year because I knew I wanted to get into school right away, just because I didn't want to like forget anything. So I didn't want to take a gap year. So I worked my butt off freshman and sophomore year and junior year to apply. But I do know some people who have taken a gap year and they love it. It gives them time to make money, gives them time to travel and just relax before starting PA school, because you guys all know PA school is crazy. You're gonna be studying 24/7. You're not gonna have time to do anything. So there's like pros and cons to both of them. It's really like personal preference, and it just depends on like your goals. So question 9, how are interviews and any recommendations on what to wear? So for interviews, I would say it's pretty nerve-wracking, but I'd recommend not over practicing and stressing yourself out too much, because I think that's what hurt some of my interviews. I was so stressed out about like being so perfect and like not like really reciting my answers, but I felt like I was trying way too hard to be someone that I wasn't, and I think that's what really affected some of my interviews. So I'd say like really go in there truly being yourself. Don't over prepare. Make sure you look good that day. I would recommend wearing something that makes you stand out. So I noticed a lot of people were wearing black and white, and I knew for me, I like fashion, I like trying different things out. So I knew I didn't want to wear like a black and white suit. So for me, I got my suit from Amazon actually, and it's kind of like a striped gray and white suit. Also, I'm going to try to put a picture of the suit right here that I got off Amazon, so that way you can see what it looks like. Question 10, any advice on making the application process easier? So yes, and I wish I listened to this advice because I didn't, and I regret it. But so you can open the CASPA application before the cycle opens. So the cycle opens in May, but you can already open the CASPA application in January, and you can start working on your descriptions, start working on your personal statement, and start inputting like your transcripts and like your grades and stuff like that. Just make sure when the cycle does open again in May that you click transfer. Also, when you do open your CASPA application, make sure you sign up with a brand new email. This is the part I didn't do. So I used my personal email, and by the time I had interviews, like my personal email started getting too full, like my Google account started getting too full, and I was running out of storage. So I had to like delete like a ton of like my Google Photos off, so I'd have like enough storage so schools can still email me. So I would recommend opening your CASPA application with a brand new email solely just for applications, so that way you don't have that issue. So that's all I have for y'all today. Thank you guys for watching. If you do have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or also just shoot me like a DM on Instagram. If you know me in real life, you know I don't gatekeep anything. I'm a really honest person, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and good luck.